We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot, season number 4, episode number 57. And yeah, man, we back at it, man. We here at the weekend, man. I hope you guys had a good week as we mosey on into the weekend, man. And woo, boy, I know a lot of people couldn't wait for the weekend, man. Long work week and so forth. And man, for your first time listening, we on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. We provide hot fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're an OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in once again. But as I mentioned, man, we had the weekend across the sporting landscape. And it has been a very eventful past 48 hours across the sporting landscape. As we all know that the NBA Finals jumped off. Game 1 last night. Oklahoma City Thunder at home taking on the Indiana Pacers. Both of these teams well deserving to get here in the finals. Oklahoma City came into this NBA Finals, man, with a 68-game win team. A team that, got the reigning MVP of the NBA on it. Also, two good young head coach, and Mark Daigneault taking on, man, the trusted Indiana Pacers. This is a team that has had epic comebacks all through these NBA playoffs. This is a team that has knocked out a few heavyweights, especially in the Eastern Conference, to get here to the NBA Finals. And boy, was Game 1 epic, man. Game 1 was an epic showdown, man. And Game 1s have always been kind of like a little mini litmus test of the NBA Finals. We've had some classic ones over the years. And coming up on this show, man, I got my Big Five coming up as far as Game 1s is concerned. Big 5 Game 1s, man. Upsets in Game number 1, man, as the team came out and kind of shocked the world a little bit, still in Game number 1. So I got a Big 5 coming up in regards to that. Obviously, we're going to get knee deep into the NBA Finals in Game number 1 that jumped off as the Indiana Pacers was able to come back in epic fashion and knock off the Oklahoma City Thunder at home. And so we're going to get into that. Also, news came across the sports desk, man, earlier this morning. And I know a lot of people was like, man, this is crazy, because a lot of people thought that this news was going to break probably about 2 months ago, man. But I'm talking about the whole Aaron Rodgers, man, signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 1-year deal. Steelers who had been out here looking real thirsty out here, man, the last couple months since the NFL draft. Just not sure what direction this organization is going to go to. Missing at the quarterback position. They had the incumbent Mason Rudolph as being the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers before, making this big time move, man, for Aaron Rodgers. And, there's been a lot of talk about Mike Tomlin up there in Pittsburgh. Has his voice gotten stale up there in Pittsburgh? This is a team that, get a winning season every year, man, but they've bailed out of the first round, man, the last, 5 or so years. And so a lot of people real hot up in Pittsburgh, rightfully so. This is a good fan base, organization that has won, 5, Super Bowl titles over the years. And so, well deserving from the fan base first and foremost. So, I'm going to get into that, man, that whole deal with Aaron Rodgers, man. I've been critical of Aaron Rodgers, man. Those who know OG of the show, I've been critical of Aaron, man, just being just straight diva. I thought this was interesting, as well as another footnote is that this news break a day after the NBA Finals began, and I just thought it was real interesting, man, from Aaron Rodgers, man. A lot of people thought, he had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, me as well. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit later on as well in the show coming up. Also in the show, there was a little interesting, and there's been a few little hirings across the NBA landscape, low key, as we get into this NBA final season, final little stretch run of the NBA season. So Phoenix Suns, they hire a head coach. This is a team who's been very thirsty over the years, bringing in head coaches and then firing them a year after, their tenure began. Coach Bud being the latest casualty in that. And I don't know what to say, really. All I heard is really Devin Booker, had kind of a little word and say into the coaching situation. But to me, and it's no disrespect to Devin Booker, man, the Phoenix Suns, man, they got a lot of work to do this summer. As far as, movement, I think that Kevin Durant will be moved this summer at some point. Word on the street is the New York Knicks is interested, and, that might be a big time move, man. And so we'll see what that whole situation unfolds, because much as I love KD, I mean, he's not a spring chicken no more, man. And so, I know he want to be in a situation where he has an opportunity to be on a contending team. We haven't seen that over the last couple of years in Phoenix. It's been a straight train wreck. And so, yeah, they got some big time moves they got to make. But also, too, on that hiring front is the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz, man, out here, a team that, fell short, this season, man. Their team in the Western Conference, man, got a long mountain to climb, man, with the contenders in the Western Conference. But they went ahead and they signed the general manager. Now, all who know that the Utah Jazz actually had Danny Ainge, I believe he's the president of basketball operations, but I know he's in the front office out there in Utah. And, his son get hired for the general manager position with the Utah Jazz. And I just heard the cronies come out. I heard it come out. Now, a lot of people think that that's a nepotism move. And obviously it's a situation where if you have, father hire a son within the organization to be a general manager of any sports franchise, you would think that definitely there's nepotism. And I heard, Shannon Sharp, the other little LeBron cronies out there, man. And no disrespect to Shay. I'm just saying, he a LeBron crony. Hearing, what about Bronny? See, they ain't say nothing. See, they ain't say nothing with Danny Ainge hired his son. Slow down. And so this is something that, what they say, old media versus, kind of, new media, where you got to do your research out here. First and foremost, Danny Ainge's son was part of the Boston Celtics organization. And if I'm not mistaken, he's been with that organization, the Boston Celtics, for 14 years. So if he was just a pity hire or a guy that wasn't competent enough to be able to do the job, you're not going to be there 14 years. You're not going to be there 14 years. You're not going to be 14 years at no job if you're not getting the job done and they feel like you just a mercy hire pretty much. And so I think that Danny Ainge's son, I think he's earned his stripes in this. I mean, the NBA, man, it's a long, climb to, these front office positions. And there's a lot of, people within the organization, who do good work. And sometimes, they got to get an opportunity to be able to rock out with being the general manager of an NBA team or any sports franchise. And so if you tell me that a gentleman or a young lady has spent 14 years within an organization, before, getting put on, to me, they paid their dues, man. So, I just think that at the end of the day, man, you just got a lot of LeBron cronies out there just reaching. I'm not going to circle back on the Bronny whole situation. I wish the best for Bronny. He showed me something a little bit this season. We'll see if he can develop his game and see if he can grow. But, just to call out, Danny Ainge, for, his son, just, like it's a mercy put on, man, the guy paid his dues, man. So just going back up off of that whole situation, man. So I definitely had to speak my piece on that. And as I mentioned, man, it's just been a crazy slate. Also, news that I've heard across the NBA as well with Adam Silver, obviously commissioner of the NBA. Came out, a little bit before the finals. He had his little press conference, but he made a couple little appearances across the media. And word on the street is that the All-Star game format, I know you guys have heard, I reported it here on the podcast, is that they obviously moving away from the corny All-Star game format that they had this season. No disrespect to Steph Curry, man, but it just didn't work. And it looks like the NBA is transitioning to American-born players, U.S. players versus international players. And I just think it's been a long time coming for the NBA. Because it's been 7 years since an American-born player has won the MVP award in the NBA. And I'm not a hater of that. I've always been a proponent of international basketball. I watch international basketball. I just got a feel for it as far as prospects over there who I feel can come and transition into the NBA and be an asset. I got a long track record, as far as, scoping out talent overseas and being able to see if these guys, definitely, can get it in. I remember one of my first guys that I looked at on the international landscape was Dirk Nowitzki, back in, the mid to the late 90s. I already envisioned he was going to be an NBA MVP at some point in his career. He was just that talented. So I think that the NBA is a long time coming for them to be able to do this USA versus world, situation. I think it draws interest to the sport as well, because as an American, we getting our butt whooped right now on the talent stand front as far as just them straight up guys. Now, we got guys too in the United States, but a lot of our guys are kind of older a little bit. And so, it's time for, some of the younger, American-born players to be able to lead a team to an NBA Finals and to an NBA championship. Tyrese Halliburton right now got a grand opportunity for that. So, as I mentioned, man, we're going to dig into the finals, man, in game number 1 of the NBA Finals. I'm definitely going to break that thing down, man, as the Pacers, another epic comeback. Once again, we've seen this many, many times over in this playoff run by the Indiana Pacers. I'm going to get knee deep into that. So, once again, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spots. Welcome back. And game 1 of the NBA Finals jumped off last night. Matchup between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, man, the Thunder coming into this NBA Finals, man, as definitely the favorite coming in. They basically was a 10-point favorite in Vegas, man, for this matchup against the Indiana Pacers. And this was a game coming in first and foremost, man. I was just excited whenever you got the NBA Finals, man, and slating. I know the NBA, has had, say they issues over the last couple of seasons, man, as far as ratings. And I know the ratings, which they ain't came out, man. I'm definitely going to hit you guys up, man, with what the ratings look like as well, just of this NBA Finals as a whole collective. But, I know the ratings probably going to be down, man. But these are two teams that are well deserving to get here to the NBA Finals. Both teams can definitely play defense, at a pretty high level, especially Oklahoma City, statistically the best defensive team in the league. One of those historic teams just from a statistical standpoint, we've seen, man, in a minute. And coming in, in this series overall, I'm putting it out there, man. This is the first time checking your boy out, man. I had Oklahoma City, man, winning this series in 6 games. But I wasn't sleeping or slacking on this Indiana Pacers team. This is a team, man, that we've seen get out of the gauntlet every single time. A lot of people, just harp about, the whole situation, man, in New York, what they did to the New York Knicks. But are we forgetting about what they did to the Cleveland Cavaliers? This is a team right now, man. The Indiana Pacers is big game hunting. Tyrese Halliburton, man, outstanding performance, man, at the end of this basketball game. It was an epic classic game number 1. There's been a lot of classic game number 1s, man, over the years. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm going to hit you guys with my big 5, man, to wrap it up as far as game number 1s is concerned. But let's peel the onion back on this one a little bit, man. As coming into this game, just early part of the game, I thought that you can definitely see the layoff from the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a team that hadn't really played no real basketball in about a week. Since, knocking off the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games and getting to the NBA Finals. And, this is a team that I expected coming in this game that they was going to be a little lackadaisical a little bit. But, the interesting thing and the beauty of Oklahoma City Thunder, team and what they're able to do is that even if they're not clicking on cylinders as far as from an offensive standpoint, their defense still maintain a certain level. And I thought that's what we saw in the first quarter of this game. Is that they defense still played at a certain level, even though Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he came out in the game, broke a little bit. There was just a little rust as far as, Jalen Williams is concerned. And just, as a whole, Oklahoma City. I thought that, Indiana Pacers in the same right. I just thought that they were just trying to make soft passes out there. They just were still trying to kind of get a feel for the game speed and the proper game speed that they're able to play against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you're going to get that, man, especially in game number 1. It's really a fill-out process. No different than boxing, man. 2 heavyweights or 2, championship-level boxers get in the ring, man. The first, 2 rounds or so, it's going to be a filling-out process. And I think that's what we saw in the first quarter of this game. Just epic, man, from the turnover standpoint from Oklahoma City. I thought that they was right on Pete, man, playing the passing lanes. And, they had the Pacers in a funk. And we start to see, the crowd in Oklahoma City rev up a little bit. You thought that the Oklahoma City Thunder at some point, especially early kind of in the first half, when you saw that, the Indiana Pacers was on track to give 20 turnovers in the first half of an NBA Finals game, which I think was a record going back, 25 years plus. So, when you'd have told me coming into this game that the Oklahoma City Thunder would make, Indiana commit as many as 20 turnovers in the first half, this is a blowout, people. This is a straight blowout. We done seen this many times before with the Oklahoma City Thunder so far this season. They get you in that double-digit turnover situation, it's a wrap for you, man. They out in transition. They getting points off turnovers. But the crucial part about Indiana was, and I think a lot of people really kind of glossing over this, was to me they transition defense. They didn't allow Oklahoma City, when they got the ball turned over, to get on the run. And I think that kind of capped Jalen Williams a little bit, really being the second command offensively, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought Chet Holmgren played a little bit, good in the first quarter or so. And then he kind of trended down. And we saw that, towards the end of the game where he wasn't on the floor. Hartenstein wasn't on the floor either. And these were two guys who was, giving you a little work, in the first quarter or so. And I thought, and it really looked like, man, Oklahoma City was just a little bit too big for Indiana. And this is where coaching comes into play, especially when you talk about high-level NBA Finals. Rick Carlisle, man, super OG, was won an NBA championship, with the Dallas Mavericks. We've seen him, do his magic before. And I just thought that was interesting that Oklahoma City kind of went away from those guys. But to me, the first half, like I said, it was a fill-out process. It was a bunch of turnovers from both teams. Both teams in the ebb and flow of the game just wasn't, what we consider, in a flow or back and forth. But I still thought that, Oklahoma City was still in a good position. It was interesting to hear just kind of the words from Rick Carlisle at halftime to his team, which I thought was a good point. And it was something that I was kind of looking at during the first half. As far as them not being able to score off them turnovers, it kind of kept Indiana just upright in this basketball game. And I thought once we got into kind of the second half, especially Tyrese Halliburton, he started to get his flow a little bit. He started to get his feet under him a little bit, making more plays, not turning the ball over. And speaking of guys not turning the ball over and making plays, Andrew Nembhard. Oh, what a game did Andrew Nembhard have last night. And the stat sheet won't tell you what type of game that this guy had, man, but just his floor game was impeccable, especially late in this basketball game. And it comes back to coaching again. Great job by Rick Carlisle, seeing what time it was with Lou Dort putting heavy pressure on Tyrese Halliburton, just getting them in a situation where they couldn't get to their points and get to their spots. That's why you're seeing the offense kind of bog down a little bit. He went to Nembhard, and Nembhard had that thing on a yo-yo. You wasn't getting it from Nembhard. He had it on a straight yo-yo, not turning the rock over, man. And I thought, Oklahoma City, they were able to get away with a little bit going small, especially for me, is they didn't allow Indiana to dump the ball to be able to get the ball and entry into the post. They was able to get deflections, and there was a lot of turnovers from that early part of the game from Indiana. But it was a thing that I thought it was key for Indiana to go back to that, especially when they took Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren off of the floor. We saw that part of the game opened up a little bit. You had Pascal Siakam, giving you a little couple baskets down there on that. You seen Miles Turner get a put back down there. And I thought towards the end of the third quarter, that kind of got the wheels going for the Indiana Pacers. I think that kind of just got them kind of right on their P, just got them leveled off. And then you can't forget about just the three-point shooting from Indiana. I mean, the three-point shooting, and to me, as I mentioned in this series, it's not a series of two teams who shoot 8,000 threes, but they shoot enough of them to be able to make them and be a backbreaker. And Opie Toppin, man, the performance that he had last night was outstanding as well. Hit some big shots for them. I think he ended up with 5 or 6 threes in this game. Just outstanding for him. And it just kind of moves around for Indiana. Each time they get in these grudge match type of games, it's guys hitting threes. Nembhard hit a big 3 down the stretch, and it was very timely, and I think it killed the energy and the momentum of the building up in Oklahoma City. And I thought that they was kind of in a free fall, ever since, they was making those big 3-point baskets. I thought from Oklahoma City's perspective, I thought it was good, and they finally woke up being able to get the ball, man, to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander towards the end of the game. That's what you got your MVP for, to be able to get you out of jams, man, especially when the momentum was starting to turn a little bit for Indiana's favor. They was able to give Shai the ball, man, and he was able to do work. I mean, he had some big-time plays, ended up with 38 points in this game. Spectacular, debut performance by, any player in the NBA Finals set, man. So I took my cap to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I just thought it was outstanding, the job at the end of the game that Nembhard did on him. These two guys, man, playing, for the Canadian national team, both from Canada, represented the Olympics in the last Olympic Games. And, I just thought it was kind of funny, them just going back and forth, shoving a little bit. And, Nembhard was able to get that big time stop. And I think finally, another thing was, I thought it was a great job that Rick Carlisle did not call a timeout towards the end of this game. Especially, obviously once, they got the ball, the last 10 seconds of the game. I thought that, to me, that really essentially was kind of the play of the game, just from a strategic standpoint. Because obviously Lou Dort out there is a pit bull. And because you didn't have Chet Holmgren on the floor, you didn't have Hartenstein on the floor, with Indiana, when they're length and the guys that they have, their bigs able to stretch you out and shoot threes, I thought it was a matchup. It wasn't a favorable matchup for Oklahoma City because they had to take one of those smalls and put them on kind of a big. And we saw that with Lou Dort. He ended up staying home, on the strong side of the court. And as we saw Halliburton bring the ball down, you had Pascal Siakam just in the pocket on that side, and what we call back in the day two and ones, where you got to make a decision defensively. Alex Caruso, you got to make a decision. Either you're gonna flash down to Tyrese Halliburton and you leave Pascal Siakam wide open, who he had fled out to the 3-point line and then slid back in towards the basket right on time. And it's the best defensive really play to play it if you're going to be in that situation, to where at the end of the day, you would rather a guy be able to make a 15-foot shot versus a shot right at the basket or a wide open shot out the short 3-point corner. So at the end of the day, it's a learning lesson for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think it's an organization, still the youngest team that we've seen in an NBA Finals, man, since 1977. So, this is still a young team. It's still a little growth, but I think when you get to the NBA Finals, man, you grow game by game. But I definitely think that Indiana Pacers, man, put the NBA world, man, the basketball world and the sports world, man, on notice that this is a legitimate organization and they have a shot at winning an NBA championship this season. We definitely see what it do, man, going into game number 2. As game number 2, man, will be played, man, on Sunday, man, once again on ABC. You know how the NBA do, man. They just trying to snatch up all prime time, man. Can't wait for game number 2. It's definitely going to be crucial for Oklahoma City. All the pressure is on them to win game number 2. As we saw in last series, man, as the Pacers, in the Eastern Conference Finals, they was able to go up into New York and Madison Square Garden and take both games. And to me, the series was over at that point once Indiana, which I predicted, by the way, before the series began, that they was going to knock off the New York Knicks. They won 2 games up at Madison Square Garden, and to me, I just think the Knicks just couldn't beat them 4 out of 5 games, man. And so Oklahoma City, they definitely don't want to get in that situation, losing 2 games at home, but we'll see what it do, man, coming up in game number 2. And coming up, I got my Big 5, man. I got another Big 5 for you, man. I'm going to be hitting y'all and busting y'all upside the head with these Big 5, man, as we wind down to the NBA season. Also, too, wind down season number 4 as we're going to conclude, man, once the NBA Finals is over. Probably going to give you guys a little draft talk, a little NBA draft seasoning as well, as far as we jumping off the end of season number 4. But coming up, I got the Big 5, my Big 5 game number 1, man, upset specials in game number 1. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Yeah, man, before we get out of here, man, don't forget, man, to check your boy out, man. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Man, we out here, man, on Twitter at We On Fire Sports. Also, too, on Podbean, and also, too, wherever podcasts can be listened to as well. Also, too, on Facebook at We On Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, man, you can't forget to check my boys out, too, man, on the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast. My man, Isalim, Mr. Taylor Street, and Mako the Mad Russian. Catch them boys on YouTube at Firebox 2300. They're also too on Spreaker. Definitely probably gonna have to connect game, man, as far as these NBA Finals is concerned, man. Definitely gonna have to check in, man, one of them gentlemen, as well as I'm making my spot appearances on Hot Wire Edition over there at the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast. But man, I got my Big 5, man. I got my Big 5, man, NBA Final style, man. As I mentioned a little earlier, I'm going to be hitting you guys with Big 5s, man, as we wrap up season number 4 at the conclusion of the NBA Finals. And yeah, man, it's Big Five. This is my game number one, man. Upsets are what we consider kind of shocking the world, kind of putting the NBA landscape and world on notice. And coming in at number 5, man. At number 5, man, I'm taking you guys a little bit back to the 1980s, man. This was a classic matchup. You know, I remember being a youngin', man, just couldn't wait, man, for this matchup. This was a heavyweight matchup to me, man. We going back to 1988 NBA Finals. Those who in the know already know what it is, man. The Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Detroit Pistons. Los Angeles Lakers, man, they came into this finals, man, trying to repeat, be the first team to repeat in basically 20 years, man, in the NBA at that point. You know, the Detroit Pistons, the bad boy Detroit Pistons, Isaiah Thomas and Chuck Daly and, you know, obviously Dennis Rodman and Sally and Lambiers and all of them, man. And Adrian Dentley was on the squad at this point. The Detroit Pistons, man, they had just got over the hump with the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, you know, Larry Bird, man, Robert Parrish, and McHale, big-time Big Three. It kind of really was the end of that Big Three era for the Boston Celtics, man, as the Detroit Pistons was able to move on through the Eastern Conference Finals and get to the NBA Finals. We had the epic matchup between Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas. To me, in my opinion, man, it's probably the best point guard play just across the board we've seen ever in the NBA Finals. And the Pistons were the new kids on the block. They was the new kids on the block. I mean, the Lakers won 5 NBA championships in the 1980s. They was going up for number 5 in this one. And the Detroit Pistons, man, came in, man, in game number 1, man, put it on notice, man, knocked off the Los Angeles Lakers in game number 1. Lakers had home court advantage in this series. You know, once I saw, you know, the Pistons still game number 1, man, in the Great Western form back in the day, I knew what time it was. I said, yeah, this is a 7-game series, man, and the Los Angeles Lakers are going to have to scratch and claw to get out of this series, man. Detroit, they own one right now, man, as the Lakers was eventually able to win this series, man, in 7 games. Shout out to NBA Finals MVP, you know, my man, big game James Worthy, man, triple-double in game number 7, man, as the Lakers was able to knock off the Pistons. We obviously know what happened, man, with Isaiah Thomas in game 6. Epic, just fighting through injury, man, just a warrior performance, but the Pistons fell up short in this series. But I got game number 1 in this series, man, 1988 NBA Finals coming in at number 5. At number 4, man, you know I got to give you some of my special local sauce, man, on number 4, man. My Chicago Bulls coming in at number 4, man. 1993 NBA Finals, man, Bulls versus Suns. Chicago Bulls was coming into this series, man, trying to win 3 consecutive NBA championships. You know, team hadn't done that, man, since the Boston Celtics did back in the day. So it definitely was big time, you know, history making, man, for the Bulls. You know, he had Charles Barkley, man, his first year in Phoenix, moving over from Philadelphia, being the MVP of the league, you know, just under Dan Marley. You had Danny Ainge on that team. You know, you just had a stout, you know, Kevin Johnson. Can't forget about KJ, of course. You know, just playing at a high level. And the Phoenix Suns, you know, had the best record in the league that year. They had home court advantage that year. The Bulls had got over, you know, our nemesis, the New York Knicks, man, in the Eastern Conference Finals. We was a little worn down, just a little bit. But we came in game number 1, man, and just put it down. The Phoenix Suns, you know, it was a big-time stage for them, and it showed in game number 1 as the Bulls was able to, you know, snatch that loose change, knock off Charles Barkley and company in game number 1. I knew then in the entire city of Chicago just had that swag and that confidence, man. We was going to get rid of the Phoenix Suns in that series. We was able to knock them off in 6 games. We actually won game 2 as well up in Phoenix. And to put them in a big 0-2 hole, man, losing their first 2 home games. And so, yeah, game number 1, man, for me, 1993 NBA Finals, man, it was big time because it was a superstar matchup. And the Bulls, man, we was trying to make history, man, and we definitely had to steal a game in Phoenix. Went ahead and took game number 1 in 93, man, coming in at number 4. Number 3, man, and we're going to keep it in the 90s, man. We're going to keep it in the 90s, man. 1995 NBA Finals, man. This NBA Finals was between the Houston Rockets. Shout out to the Dream. Hakeem Olajuwon, Kenny Smith, Rudy Tomjanovich, you know, Robert Horry on this team. My man Sam Cassell on this squad. And this was a team that was trying to repeat as NBA champions. Can't forget about my man Clyde Drexler as well. And Orlando, they was the new kids on the block. You know, you had Shaq and Penny, man, the dynamic duo, man. We hadn't seen nothing like that, man, since Kareem and Magic. You know, Shaq just being extra dominant, you know, got to the NBA Finals, man, knocking off the Indiana Pacers, knocked my Bulls off, you know, on the way, you know, Jordan coming back with the 4-5. And game number 1, you know, Houston was an underdog. They was a 6 seed. You know, to me, this is one of the best NBA Finals runs and championship runs, man, that's underrated in NBA history, what Houston was able to do. You know, this is a team that had a 6 seed, didn't have home court advantage in no series, came in, man, and this is a game that is famous for the Nick Anderson free throws at the end of the game, man. Nick Anderson, shout out to Nick Anderson, Chi-Town's finest, man. You know, Simeon High School, man. You know, just, you know, big time legend, man, back at home, University of Illinois, man. Been watching Nick, you know, since I was a young guy. Much respect. But boy, them 4 free throws, man, was costly as Orlando, man. And shout out to Kenny Smith making a big time 3 in that game, too, at the end of that game, man. The Houston Rockets was able to steal game number 1, man. Didn't look back, went ahead and swept the Orlando Magic in 4 games in the 95 NBA Finals for them repeating. Shout out to Clutch City and H-Town. And that one, I got them coming in at number 3. At number 2. Number 2, folks, is what we saw last night. Number 2, man, 2025 NBA Finals. Indiana Pacers taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Pacers big time underdog in this game, man. 10-point underdog basically coming into this game. Nobody gave this team a fighting chance in this series. And also 2 in game 1. And they came in, man, epic, big time comeback, man, down 15 plus points against the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road in a hostile environment. And, man, they put that work in, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Tyrese Halliburton hitting the shot with 0.3 seconds. First lead of the game, by the way, for the Indiana Pacers. They trailed the entire game in this one. Epic, big-time comeback, man. I got this coming in at number 2, man. It's just epic. But at number one, man, this, man, take you guys back, man, to the early 2000s. NBA, you know, was going through, you know, just that transition period. You know, Shaquille O'Neal being the face of the league, a young 21-year-old Kobe Bryant being the face of the league. And yeah, I'm going back to 2001, man, the Los Angeles Lakers against the Philadelphia 76ers. 76ers, man, just the man, the myth, the legend. Allen Iverson, man, MVP of the league that year. Just an outstanding just season for him, man. Just tough guy extraordinaire, man. Man, a lot of people say what they got to say about Allen Iverson, man. This guy was a general, man. And just what he did in game number 1 just was epic. You know, put the team on his back. It's just ironic, man. The smallest guy on the court, man. The most powerful guy on the court. You know, and it just was one of them things of what Philadelphia, man, they just came in on David and Goliath mode. And to me, I think the whole theory or the whole just breakdown of game number 1 from an underdog standpoint, it's the easiest game to get in an NBA Finals. It's the easiest game to get. Because the team that's the favorite, they're going to play probably a little bit tight. So that's your chance and opportunity, man, to steal game number 1 in the series. You know, even though I got Oklahoma City, you know, winning this series in 6 games, you know, I just felt that the Indiana Pacers was going to snatch game number 1 due to the layoff, you know, just in this NBA Finals. And I think that we kind of saw that a little bit, you know, with the Lakers and, you know, Philadelphia series back in 2000. Lakers was kind of, you know, cruise walking, you know, feeling themselves. And and Philadelphia came in there and just, you know, made it do what it do. So, man, that's my big 5, man. Game number 1, man. Upsets and big game situation. Game number 1 of the NBA Finals, man. So, glad you guys, man, was able to check me out, man. We on 5 Sports Podcast, The Spot, providing hot fire takes and analysis across the sport landscape. Definitely, man, I'll be back at you guys, man, at the top of the week. Coming up, man, we'll get into that game number 2 of the NBA Finals and what else cracked across the sporting landscape. We on 5 Sports Podcast, The Spot.